Alright, in this video I'll be taking another look at RVN or Ravencoin, and the reason I'm doing this is because I got a comment recently asking me to do this. If you ever want me to make a video on any altcoins that I made a video on in the past, or even ones that I haven't, speak up, say something about it. It may convince me to do it. Today I was looking for a video to make, and you convinced me, bro, so I'm doing it. And shout out to Ocean Man. They say the voyage to the corner of the globe is a real trip. And you could say I myself am an ocean man of sorts as well, with the waves and all that. So Ravencoin clearly has had a pretty substantial move to the downside. It has continued this retracement following what was a pretty bullish pump. I'm going to go over what I was looking at last time. This is the TA that I had when I pulled this up, and I did go through and, well, do some more TA. So I will talk about that as well. And I'll just give my overall thoughts on this. I'll take a look at Market Cypher. We'll see what I can yap about with this altcoin. So I was looking at a bullish break here. We did have a pretty significant bullish break, and I obviously still had this high marked out because this is probably a more significant lower high. I think if you're looking at potentially the weekly, maybe even the 2-weekly time frame, this would be a lower high, and we still have not broken structure yet. And not only is it that, it is also a range high. I'm still looking at this as being a sideways range, and clearly we have to break the range high if we're going to tackle any of the price action above it. Now down here I had two significant lows marked out. This one is a weekly higher low, this one is a daily higher low, and I just drew the distinction between them because I think this is more of a retracement. This is kind of a quicker retracement. I wouldn't really count that as a weekly high or low. I had this anchored VWAP pulled up from this high, and I believe my last video on this was in May. So this was in April, so yeah, I probably made my last video sometime around here. And at that time, we were holding this green box of support. Don't ask me what this is. I didn't go back and watch my video. I don't know why I was looking at this, but I can probably guess and say this was just a significant support resistance flip zone within this range. We held support on the box, resistance on the box. We kind of ranged in the box. We found resistance on it right here and here. Overall, this box is just a historic area where price will find either support or resistance. It's historically been significant, and we tried to hold support on it yet again the last time I was looking at this. We were kind of bouncing from it, wicking from it. But it did not hold for long. We clearly fell below it. We clearly fell below this daily higher low, and we even came down to this weekly higher low. Now, the first thing I noticed when I pulled this chart up is that we, took out this weekly higher low first off, and we did technically close below it on the weekly time frame. However, I would not consider this a significant break. In fact, I would consider this more of an SFP than a break, just considering how we were barely able to close below this low, how we got a significant move below it, but the candle body below this point, basically the part of the candle body that I outlined in this box, will make it a different color. So the candle body within that yellow box is much less significant than the wicks. The wicks take up most of the price action in this box. The fact that we got a significant move below this point, but we rebounded, we barely closed below it, I'm looking at that as more of an SFP than a break. And we can even try looking at some other exchanges to see if this was more of a clear SFP, because we could have closed somewhere slightly different on other time frames. So on the perpetual contract, it looks about the same, and it looks like the Bybit one is slightly different. Either this wick over here goes slightly lower, or this candle closed slightly higher, but either way, on Bybit, it is a picture perfect SFP. So that is reassuring for that idea that, I'm kind of viewing that as more of an SFP than a break. Switching that weekly bullish structure that I was looking at back to bearish. That, is what could have happened if we closed significantly down below here. But I would say so far the bullish structure is technically still intact because we SFP'd it. And keeping in mind this is structure within not just a larger structure pull, but also a range. When you're looking at structure within a range, you have to think about it in the context of the range itself. And just keep in mind that the two play into each other, but, in some cases, range rotation rules may overrule structure rules. But, in this case, what has happened in structure and in the range, let me change this back to white. We've got another rotation back to the low of the range. We were in bullish market structure of sorts, and we just came down to wick out what is probably the most important level. So at this point, it seems like it's trying to keep the bullish structure intact, and could potentially be gearing up for another rotation, maybe up to the point of control of this larger range, maybe up to even this high, just because that's what ranges like to do. They like to move from high to low. We attempted to move to the high, came back down to the low, and at this point, everything that I'm going to be looking at is going to be in the context of not just this larger range, but also this structure that we're in. I think, realistically speaking, I would like to try and target higher than this range, higher than this context, but for right now, I'm going to be focusing on the price action in front of us. So does it really make sense to shoot for targets higher than this point or higher than the range point? I don't think it does, at least until price action proves that it is breaking out of those contexts. So next, what I've done here is I basically marked out a bunch of resistances for us. I don't think there's too much support that I can mark out below us other than, the actual range low. Sure, we could continue moving down further and SFP that. And at that point, even if we break weekly structure, are we really going to expect to move much farther down below this massive range when this is clearly the context that has been trading in since 2022 in June? I would really say that at that point, this structure doesn't really matter that much. We already hit what I would call the target. And if it continues lower from there, if it just goes to 0, okay, well, maybe the structure told you that ahead of time, but I think that's highly unlikely. I would, at that point, probably assume that the range context would overrule the structure development that would happen if we broke structure there. So I'm going to mark out this range low, and we'll change the color of this to kind of distinguish that, and I will also change the color of the range high. And the first thing I'm going to look at is the volume of this range, the fixed range pull of this range. Well, we can see that, hey, there's a bit of a confluence around this higher low. We also took out the value area low. So looking at, range rotation rules in terms of the fixed range pull, we already hit what you could call the objective of that. You don't always have to hit the absolute extreme range point. Sometimes the value area low will act as that point that you see a range rotation from. That's pretty much what happened around the high. I'm not sure if it was exactly the same when we were back here, but we took out the value area high, we fell back down below it, and that caused a full-on range rotation in terms of the volume. And something else I want to point out here is we are approaching the point of control. The point of control is right above us. It's actually lining up pretty closely with this previous higher low, which, I still think this area is significant. It could become some sort of a support resistance flip. And the confluence with the point of control, I think, makes that area very significant. So what I am going to do is I'll also try and find the box that I put around there, and there it is. So yeah, I am looking at this area as very significant resistance. Range point of control, we have some anchored VWAP confluence. If I turn on this anchored VWAP, that's a new one I pulled up, and the reason for that is, I still think the anchored VWAP from this point is very significant, but price has disrespected that point right here. Also, technically, this is not a lower high anymore. I will kind of go over what I'm seeing with structure here. I think we kind of have two structure pulls. We have the higher time frame downtrend, which is this. We put in a low, lower high. We came down to put in a lower low. Even if it was just a wick, it's still a lower low. And then this was the highest point following that before we continued down. And I don't think this structure is necessarily the same as this structure. I think this is higher time frame structure. I think this downtrend right here is lower time frame structure. So I will talk more about that in a little bit. I did decide to pull an anchored VWAP from this significant lower high, and the orange anchored VWAP is inside that box of resistance. It's actually coming very close to aligning with that point of control. The other one is just above the box, and potentially that moves down towards the higher end of the box by the time we work our way up there. And that is my most immediate area of resistance that I'm looking at. Now, the reason I think this is significant is because, well, number one, if we're going off the theory that, okay, we hit value area low, this could cause a range rotation, the point of control is a decision point. The point of control is where price decides, okay, are we going to reject from there and then potentially continue working down to the actual range low, or can we get above the point of control? And if you can, then I think that pretty much opens the door to calling this the new target of the range rotation. This is, as I said, is kind of like the gatekeeper for a full-on range rotation. And right now there is some confluence with that lower time frame structure. I would probably call this more like a 4-hour downtrend, and you can clearly see the 4-hour lower highs coming in right about here. We may have already actually wicked it out. Let me put a line on it. Yep, it looks like we have already wicked out that point, so we have SFP'd that. So along with this being a decision point in terms of the range and the volume, I think this is also a decision point in terms of structure, meaning we could either just see one more very fast move up here, come back down, close like a 4-hour candle back as an SFP again, at which point, oh, we rejected from point of control and we SFP'd this lower high. That's not really a bullish look. That's not what I want to see for bullish confirmations here. That could lead to a another retracement, basically. Or maybe we do break structure. Maybe we break structure like this, but we still end up rejecting off that point of control. And at that point, the range could overrule the structure, and maybe we, again, see a retracement from that. So I'm really viewing this as a decision point. We have kind of two decisions to make here. Are we going to break structure? And if we can, are we going to get above the point of control? And, another point I want to make, what happens if we do get above point of control, but then we start falling back down below it? Well, I would say, in terms of, like, the recent developments, we have hit the objective, the value area low, and then we were able to close above point of control. I think even if we fall back down below it, sure, it still could act as resistance. It's still an important area to watch. At that point, closing significantly above point of control, in my mind, makes this the objective. Point of control does again become significant if you fall back down below it. I don't think that necessarily means that we have to come back down to value area low, or maybe it does. Maybe we do come back down to value area low, but still put in a higher low in this trend. I'm just thinking of all the scenarios that could potentially happen, but for me right now, I think if we can close above point of control, I think it's looking a lot better for a move to the upside, regardless of if we fall back down below it or not. And even if we are able to close above it, there are still plenty of areas of resistance above us. Is this zone, which is the golden pocket of this last significant downtrend, which, you could also pull it from this high. That would make it slightly different. I think this pull would have the 786 aligning in that box, but I decided to pull it from this one because I, just for whatever reason, like this high more, and I like the confluence with some other things. So it is downtrend golden pocket, as well as the point of control and high volume node of this pull. Or no, actually it's the other one. Both of these ones have the point of control coming in at the same spot, so whether you're pulling the volume of the downtrend from the actual high, or if you're pulling it from this more internal high, the point of control is aligning with this golden pocket, and I expanded my box to go from the golden pocket, include the point of control, and I also took it up to another high volume node in that downtrend pull. So looking at the volume right here, this is like, the highest volume node, or the one that's furthest to the right, is going to be the point of control. That would be this node right here. And you can see there's another high volume node up here. This area in general is just a high volume area, and interestingly enough, the high volume area kind of ends around where the golden pocket is. So I decided to include this whole area of high volume, and I took my box up to this high volume node right here. So that is going to be my next refined area of resistance. Now, sure, there's probably hundreds of areas of resistance that you can look at. I'm kind of trying to point out the areas that I think are most significant. And I also have a few more boxes marked out. So, of course, I want to look at this daily lower high. This is, like I said, the last lower high in this higher time frame downtrend. That is going to be a very significant area, and there is confluence with the macro 382. I'm going to have to find that fib pull. That is right here. So this is pulling it from that last significant high that came in March of 2024. And the 382 is aligning with our daily lower high. And I have a VWAP, and in parentheses I wrote guess. Why? Because I'm guessing that this could move down into our box by the time we make our way up here. And of course, I also have the value area high of the range marked out. And I pulled it down to the value area high of this lower time frame pull, this downtrend pull, which is also this significant high over here. And there is the 0.5 of the macro fib pull. So I marked out a bunch of areas of confluence here to clean up the screen. I'm going to turn all of this stuff off. I'll leave the higher time frame range volume pull up. But yeah, these are going to be my resistances on the way to the upside. If we get above value area high, yeah, there's probably going to be more resistance up here. But I'm not going to waste my time going over that. For right now, I'm looking at the possibility of a range rotation. Why? Because we hit value area low. If we get bullish signs, then I really wouldn't be targeting higher than value area high unless I get confirmation that that's going to happen. What would that be? Breaking above it. So I hope I kind of laid out my ideas and how I'm looking at this right now. I do think there is certainly a possibility that we see a rotation to the upside from this. Does it have to happen right now? I don't think so. Could we continue some kind of a lower time frame range here, even take out the higher time frame range low before we see another rotation in this macro range? Yeah, we certainly could, which is why I'm waiting for some kind of bullish confirmation to tell me that, well, a movement to the upside in this range is more likely. And final thing I will do here is I will run over a market cipher. Let's take a look at how things are looking. So on the weekly time frame, we do potentially have a trigger wave printing with money flow showing direction to the upside. Now, the money flow was looking much better previously. It had a very aggressive trend to the upside. Obviously, we retraced and it kind of started flattening out. However, we didn't really see it give back this bullishness. It is still putting in a higher low. We potentially now have a trigger wave to this anchor wave forming, and it looks like this green dot just appeared this week. So we have about 6 hours until the weekly candle closes. This could confirm very shortly here, and if this confirms, that is not going to make me say we're definitely rotating, but that is definitely a good bit of confidence to say, all right, this is looking a little bit more likely now. On the daily time frame, let's take a look and see, did we see bullish confirmations on that low? And at least in terms of momentum, it is looking like we had some divergences. That is good to see. I like significant lows that are marked with divergences. That makes me think of them as a stronger low. What would have made me think of it as an even better low would be if we saw money flow divergences as well. However, we didn't. Price put in a lower low along with money flow. But we did at least see some momentum divs on that value area low SFP, as well as this significant higher low. And at this point, the daily is not really looking great. We see money flow hooking back to the downside. It is flopping over. Shout out to flopping groper. And we also see that this momentum wave is potentially looking to top out with a VWAP coming to the downside. This is starting to hook over, looking like it's going to print a red dot. So in the short term, that's not making me super confident in us getting an immediate move to the upside to get above point of control. It may be a better look if we see a bit of a retracement, maybe to put in a significant higher low before we try to do that. That may give us a chance to build up some bullish momentum to actually make that break more likely. But, you know, a lot of altcoins really just do what Bitcoin does. If Bitcoin has a move up to all-time highs soon, then we very well could just see this take off, regardless of how the daily looks right now. On the 4-hour, the money flow has gone a very bullish move into the green. It is very thick in the green at the moment. It is starting to come down a little bit. And what we can see is that, it was diverging. At least momentum was diverging as we approached this lower high over here to SFP it. So we did SFP it with confirmations, some bear divs. But it does not look like we saw money flow bear divs. Not as strong of a divergence as if money flow was diverging as well. But with money flow coming back to the downside, this, again, could mean that maybe we need to see a bit of a retracement before we try and build up that bullish momentum to get a good break. And I'm sure if we go down to some of the lower time frames, we can start to see some bear divs with money flow. We don't on the 3-hour. We see the momentum divs. Even on the 2-hour, money flow put in a higher high at that point. So that's actually pretty reassuring. Okay, here on the 1-hour is where we start to see it. So, yeah, there were the double div confirmations, the double Ds, as I like to say. Momentum and money flow putting in lower highs as price put in a higher high and took out a significant level. So that is more of a actual bearish confirmation on the 1-hour. However, the 2-hour through the 4-hour are seeming to be more in agreement that this wasn't that significant of an SFP, at least in terms of the money flow. Money flow still looks good on those time frames. And actually, I want to take a look at the 4-hour. Let's see if there was money flow divs here. There really wasn't, and there was no momentum divs on that low, so that is honestly not great for confirmations of a significant low. We really only saw momentum divs on the daily, but with the at least slight confirmations on the daily and the weekly trigger wave printing, I do still think this is like a decent looking low, especially considering what it has done. So at this point, I think things are very uncertain. This is not the time where I'm going to be making any confident calls on this asset. I think we really have to wait and see how things progress, and I think I laid out pretty much the deciding factors for me. Alright, thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment. I really appreciate the support on the channel, and I will see you all in the next one.